Once you've created that document, it indexes just the same way as any other Snowflake table would. The same thing is true of our data dictionary section, which allows you to tag metrics and data dictionary terms to different assets in Secoda. And so it creates this entire ecosystem of information, whether it's dictionary terms, columns, or tables.
Greetings, everyone, through here. Welcome to the Demo Hub. Welcome to the show. Another exciting episode. We have a fascinating guest with a modern data tool we're going to be looking at and talking and discussing. And more importantly, we are going to see a demo of Secoda. With us today, our guest is Itai from Prairie. Itai, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Really glad to have you, Itai. Where are you calling from today?
I'm in Toronto, Canada.
Oh, Toronto. It's pretty amazing. How's the weather out there?
Honestly, the weather lately has felt like the West Coast, felt like San Francisco. No complaints here. It's very volatile, the weather in Toronto sometimes. So we like to enjoy the good weather when we have it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's always amazing to hear. For me, out in the Midwest, we're always talking about the weather. It's either too hot, too cold, too nice, not too nice. And someone always have an opinion about the weather. Glad to have you join us for an episode and for the show. Today, we're going to talk about Secoda. Can you talk a little bit about that for the audience who have no idea what Secoda is? Can you talk about what that product is and what you're looking to do in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. So at a 50,000-foot view, we like to start off by telling you a little bit about our origin for our name. Secoda stands for Searchable Company Data. We think about ourselves as a sort of Google search for all the different data knowledge that a company has. And that's what we do. We try to index all this desperate different information into one place and give everyone sort of a homepage when they're trying to search for information.
Oh, wow. I didn't connect the dots. So searchable company data. I think that makes sense now, Secoda. So pretty cool. So would you say you kind of are the more modern data catalog? Is that kind of where you play? Or is it more around accessibility of data? What bucket would you put this?
So data cataloging is definitely part of our solution. And actually, I think it's the core part of our solution. But I think what makes Secoda really special compared to the crowded space of data catalogs is that we try to focus ourselves on two main things. One is a holistic approach to data knowledge. So we don't just focus on technical metadata, things that are used by the data engineers. We're really trying to make data accessible to people across the company. And that means capturing things like common questions, dictionary terms, documents, analyses, even stuff like your high touch syncs, stuff coming in from Fivetran or your Great Expectation tests. And so that's the first thing that I would say kind of defines us as a little bit differently. And then the second one is really around this idea of creating a homepage for people outside of the data team. What's interesting, I think, about myself and my co-founder is we don't actually come from the data space. We're not data engineers at all. We're people who are from operations and product and engineering. And we were just frustrated by tools in our space that felt like they were built by data people just for people who were familiar with data. So with Secoda, we've set out with this mission of making everyone confident to use company data, regardless of how technical you are, how much do you know about a certain schema or database. So that's the two things that we've tried to do with how we've built the tool. And some companies refer to it not just as a data catalog, but a data portal, a homepage for people that are trying to look for information.
Oh, wow, that's really fascinating to get the context of that background. And who typically the target audience for this? Is it really that pressure coming from the business users who want to discover and use data sets that exist within the organization? Or is this the need for a product like Secoda coming from the technical teams that are looking to integrate that in their software development lifecycle to go faster, understand what data is available, and to build quicker?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? There's a little bit of push and there's a little bit of pull. From the data team side, where we see the biggest pain point is small data teams that are serving large company size and maybe are getting the same questions, the same requests over and over again, or have to hire multiple analysts or data engineers to expand their team. On the flip side, we also get brought in from a RevOps team, an operations team, a product team that is looking to leverage their data knowledge a little bit more and is limited just to the BI tool and can't actually go beyond that to start writing SQL queries or to start understanding data looks like outside of their department. So we've seen both cases for sure. I would say the more common one is the data team bringing us in, but we've definitely seen both sides.
That's awesome. As you were talking through that, I was thinking about there's a famous quote in this industry: 80% of the time spent by analysts is just running around searching for data to use, do their work. And it sounds like you're addressing that need as well as also looking at it from the business perspective.
Yeah, I think so. It's really hard to say how much time is really spent searching for data. Sometimes we try to think about like, how do we quantify this thing? We definitely know it is a lot of time. When I think about it, it's very logical though why it takes a lot of time. And I think it's also logical why a lot of data catalogs, quote unquote, maybe haven't cracked the code on really solving this. And I think the reason for it is really around just like tool interconnectedness. You think about the data catalog having metadata as its central piece of information, the BI tool having analytics as a central piece of information. Maybe you have a Slack channel called data requests with a whole bunch of questions, and those are creating Jira tickets. That's a type of information too. And there's all this sort of like interconnectedness between all these different pieces of data knowledge. And that's why I think for us, it's really sitting at the crux of how do we connect all these different pieces of data knowledge into one place so that instead of going and searching across all these different things, and we could always improve search, the real root cause is maybe we just need to improve how these tools talk to each other in one central place.
Oh, that's awesome. And I've heard you talk about it's not just a data catalog, of course, the research. Is there like a business glossary to this as well that ties with the semantics of what we're searching for? So I know this is a customer and I have the metadata around that, as well as lineage too. Not just what am I looking at as the data, but what's the lineage? Where did it come from? What's the definition of this? Can I trust this as a data set as a whole? How are you approaching solving this?
Yeah, good question. So from a lineage perspective, Secoda is able to generate lineage both on the column level and the table level, really from end to end. So we even show you how certain Fivetran syncs are coming into your warehouse, how that warehouse, how the columns interact with one another, and then maybe it goes to Tableau, maybe there's some DBT in there. We're able to map all that out right out of the box. And Secoda is completely self-service. So people can come in, they can connect their data. They don't have to talk to us at all, just works, which is nice. And in terms of your first question around, is there a glossary? Absolutely. Every resource in Secoda has a Notion-like document right alongside it. You can create a data dictionary, you can create docs, but the nice thing about the way that we've built the documentation editor in Secoda is it's completely flexible, meaning that you can also run live queries. You can tag other resources. You could even embed a Loom video or a GitHub link directly in the docs. So all these tools are talking to one another, and it's a mishmash of, you could think like maybe a data catalog, maybe some Notion, maybe some Airtable, all together to create this ideal kind of place to be implementing and then sharing your data afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating. And I can't wait to see the demo because of the think about the workspace or the work environment changing with remote work and a lot of people existing in Slack and all the comments and messages that are there. There is this tribal knowledge that's very distributed across the enterprise. And some people have it in their head, some have it in the Slack comments, and being able to pull that, it seems, into a more cohesive, searchable knowledge base. It sounds like a very fascinating solution that you have. And you did mention it's completely self-service. Is that a SaaS application then, or is it something that's hosted on-prem and you have to install that? Or how is the technical part of the deployment of this looking?
It really depends on our customer's preference. So at the most basic level, you can go to our website, you can create a workspace and it's cloud hosted. You can connect your data using our integrations tab, which I'll show you in our demo, and you can get started in our cloud hosted environment. Of course, with data, there are some security concerns that companies have, and we've had to build around that. And we have a self-hosted deployment. We can deploy in Kubernetes with Terraform. We support AWS. We support GCP. And we even support high trust environments. We have a special deployment for healthcare companies that are quite sensitive with how they even deploy their self-hosted solutions. So we go from the most cloud maybe to the most self-hosted and secure, quote unquote. We really give customers the range of options there.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And from a pricing perspective, and I'm sure you can talk about this after the demo, but is there a strategy around that? Is it seat-based? Is it by environment? You can search an inventory. How are you approaching that from a pricing perspective?
Our main pricing differentiator is the number of editors that you add to your workspace. An editor is someone that actually is responsible for changing something in Secoda. The nice thing about the pricing in Secoda is that we give our customers unlimited viewers. And so the reason we do that is because we want to align incentives with the people who we're serving. You're buying this tool because you want to share your data knowledge with people in product, with people in finance. And you know what? The thing is, a data team might not know exactly how the finance team is going to use a tool like Secoda. And so we don't want them to feel this kind of pressure of, hey, I've got 5 finance seats and maybe they're only using it once a month and I want to cut back on this expense. We really want to give them as much flexibility as possible. It's also the reason we don't charge based on the number of tables you have, the number of rows that are within those tables. We really charge just on the number of editors that you have within Secoda to try to help you organize as much of your data knowledge as possible. So it's really for me and for our team about how can we align incentives the best with our customers.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm very excited to jump in and to see the demo. So once you're ready, we can jump right in.
Sure. So I'll share my screen. Hopefully we can get through a good amount of stuff here. So you already know our name, searchable company data. One of the things that you'll notice right away when you see my screen here is that the homepage in Secoda is built in a way that is very similar to Google search. Our mission with Secoda is to make the experience of finding, understanding, and using data as easy and intuitive as a Google search. The nice thing about this workspace is that if I wanted to change this background or this logo to match what my company is actually being a part of, I can actually do that as well in Secoda. The first thing with most tools that say they're searchable company data, it's really about how do we search in Secoda. And so right here, what you'll see in Secoda is a search of a common term, customers. Secoda highlights all of the tables, explores which we've got connected, charts across different tables, dashboards. We even index jobs, columns, common dictionary terms, questions, and documents. If you wanted to filter any of the results, you can filter by a whole range of different information. And the nice thing about all of this is that it's all updated by internal and external popularity. So internal popularity might be the number of views that a certain dashboard has. External popularity might be the number of queries that are run on a certain dashboard or on a certain resource. And you can easily filter by these different assets in Secoda's search. But with Secoda, one of the things that we try to do is we try to give as much flexibility as possible, especially to people that are ideally curating the experience for viewers. And so the way that we do that is using our catalog view. Right here, you can see that in our catalog view, we can see all of the different resources that are connected to Secoda, and we can even open some of them up using the side nav. But if we wanted to explore all the different resources in Secoda, this catalog view is available for us. And it's similar to something the UI might be familiar to you from a tool like Airtable or Excel. And that is quite purposeful. The reason we built it this way is because for a lot of our teams, the idea of documenting their data is quite daunting. Now, of course, data catalogs and tools like ours will say, you know what, we automate a lot of that work. And we do the same thing. We'll automate all the schema, we'll show you popularity, we'll show you lineage, we'll show you when it was last updated and owners. But we also understand that there's a part of the documentation process that will need to be manual, regardless of how automated you want stuff to be. And so we've built this UI in a way that allows you to, for example, add a description. We could call this new description. And when we do, we can easily drag and drop this to all the tables related to it. So it speeds up any manual documentation process, which we can do on the column level, on a dashboard, on charts, events, jobs, whatever we want it to do. I'll quickly stop sharing my screen and jump to a new demo environment. And as I do, I think this is a good time to see if you have any questions.
That's very fascinating to see. And I think the approach you're taking of more kind of an Excel type of feel naturally fits with folks who are already used to that. How is that harvesting happening? Is that a push base as events are happening in the ETL pipeline into Secoda, or is it a pull base, or do you have triggers that go in every now and then and pull that metadata to populate the environment?
That's correct. So we'll pull the metadata into
Okay.
Secoda. At this point, that's the only way that we integrate with these different tools. That being said, I think it's in the roadmap for us to push metadata or to have a push-based system as well. One of the things that I quickly flip to here is our integrations tab. It's just available when you sign up. You can quickly jump to integrations and you can see all the different integrations that Secoda has right out of the box. I'll zoom in here just to make it a little bit more clear, but everything from Snowflake to Mode to Airflow, Fivetran, Great Expectations, Git, and dbt all come right out of the box with Secoda.
Just a question on that, just to double click on that. I think that's a really good list. A lot of them stand out to me. Are these integrations something that could be extended if the organization wants to build their own custom integrations, or is it something that they have to reach out to for that development?
At this point, we just offer our own integrations to Secoda. That being said, if you have data that you want to upload to Secoda that doesn't fit within our standard integrations, Secoda does offer an API which allows you to actually push data to Secoda as well. So while it might not be shown as a integration per se on this page, you can get your own data into Secoda.
Got it.
Once you connect a resource to Secoda, we allow you to quickly connect by just simply connecting to any resource. You can see the history of extractions, and if you click on a certain extraction, you can understand exactly what was extracted from this run. In addition, we allow you to set the schedule of extractions directly in Secoda. You can select any schema that you want to bring in or leave out of Secoda, all do it completely without using a support person on our side. And you can also deselect any service accounts from influencing your popularity in the search. You could even set certain permissions that map to the permissions that you've set in Snowflake, so certain people can't actually access certain tables or can't query certain tables in Secoda. And so all of these integrations are quite flexible, quite extensible. Once your data is in Secoda, the next step is really to say, okay, I want to see what Secoda is actually bringing in about this particular piece of data. And so we can search for all this different information in Secoda. Once we find a particular table that we like, we can see that Secoda brings in all this different information about the table. The nice thing about the information that's brought in from Secoda is that it's all brought in using this daily or weekly extraction that you're running. And the nice thing about that extraction is that it will update you in Secoda using these notifications if there's any updates to schema, if there's any updates to lineage downstream that actually changed and affected this table. And so you'll be able to see all of this different information directly in Secoda, regardless of you going into the app. And you can set your notifications to get these updates on schema changes or documentation changes directly in Secoda, in our app, over email, or in Slack.
That's awesome. And is it mainly on the schema, DTL type changes, or are you also profiling and looking at data quality issues and potentially changes in that perspective?
In terms of data quality, we don't force it on customers. One of the things that we've noticed with certain customers is that it seems some people want this tool just for documenting metadata, which is totally fine. And some people want it to do a little bit more data quality kind of assessments. And so we do identify column distributions if you'd like. If you don't want this to actually run and query your data, you can turn this off. This will actually tell you the count, min, max, and how filled a column is. And the nice thing about Secoda is that because we've made it extensible with tools like Great Expectations and DBT tests, and I think Metaplane, who you've had on the show, you can actually integrate those tools with Secoda to get alerts when data quality tests outside of Secoda fail and influence what's going on in the product. So we haven't built data quality ourselves, but data quality is available using these external tools.
That's very awesome. And then you did mention the feedback and the comments that could be added to the specific assets here. Can you touch a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So within this asset, one of the things that you can do as an editor is you can add specific tags, you can add governance, and Secoda actually has the ability to auto tag your PII and HIPAA data if you prefer. Any descriptions from the source are brought in. If they're brought in from DBT, from the YAML documentation, we'll also introduce those. And you can also customize this to add, for example, new properties, or if you want to hide certain properties, you can do that as well. The lineage is automatically brought in, as well as any queries that are run against this table. And if you wanted to add context to this table, there's a whole bunch of ways that you can do it. You can change the actual table description. You can add a certain description or documentation to a query. Like we could say that this query is used for MRR, for example, and we could actually see the query pulled in here. We could add a description, new name, and we could also add an owner. We can select a certain group. We could add a tag to this and add it to a certain collection. Similarly, on a table level, we have this thing called the documentation tab. And this documentation tab, I think I mentioned previously, is available everywhere in Secoda. You can add documentation to any resource by pressing the / command, which allows you to add queries, headings, bullets, files, as well as images and links to all these great tools directly within this table. If you want, you could even tag other tables or other charts or other users directly within this documentation. And so you can imagine what some of this could do. If you, for example, just wrote this light query right here and wanted to run this query to show a common query, could say common query run against this table. You could say other tables referenced are maybe their certain BT table, for example.
And you actually preview the query results as part of that comment.
Yeah, that's right. And as a viewer, I can download these results. I can even create a live chart for my viewers directly in Secoda. And so this is quite powerful for a lot of our customers, because what it does is it creates this playground of data documentation that's not just limited to Markdown. It's a complete live chart directly tied to this dashboard, this table that we've created, and we can access this anywhere.
Yeah.
So you can add quite rich documentation to this table. And the nice thing, what you'll notice is that on top of that, we can also add owners, we can add certain tags. We can also see a history of changes that were made to a table. And if we go back to our catalog view and we quickly make a change to a table, for example, this starter DBT model, one of the things that you'll notice is that there's a yellow dot that appears on this table. And this is because Secoda is built with this idea of publishing changes to your data portal. And so as an editor in Secoda, once I've made all these documentation changes, for example, we added all this stuff to this query, we changed stuff in this table, and we also changed the description, we can select or deselect any of the changes that we want and publish them for our viewers to see. And so this creates like a really nice feedback loop between viewers and editors in Secoda. Now, if I search as a viewer for the same table that I'm curious about, I can see all the column descriptions, all the information directly in Secoda. And if I had a question about that, I could even use this chat icon to ask a question about a certain table, which would also be available and searchable in Secoda. And so it creates this entire ecosystem of changes to your data, whether they're lineage changes, whether they're different queries that are being documented, whether it's documentation, and also a feedback loop between you and people outside of the data team that are trying to access this information.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. One thing you mentioned, I want to double click on that a little bit, was the concept of verifying the records and making sure that you can rank the records or the data products that are coming up correctly. And this is usually just because you're search based. If you think about what Google did with PageRank, it's not a trivial problem to solve. And you can use certain attributes to say this table or this transformation should be more trusted than the other transformations. How are you solving that? Is it just by popularity or is it by usage? How are you fundamentally solving that problem?
Oh man, so this gets into a little bit of a rabbit hole, but there's a whole bunch of different criteria in Secoda that allows us to rank different resources based on popularity. And so a resource might indicate that it's more popular for a number of reasons, one of which might be the tags that are used on a resource, which we track, how many users or owners are on a resource, when a query was last run, when a table was last updated, how many views does this resource have within Secoda, and how frequently did these views come up? And similarly, like how big are these queries? Are people actually checking out these different tabs? So we're tracking all these different events in Secoda, similar to how Google tracks the metadata. And once we see that a table is more documented, it has more context associated to it, it just jumps to the top. And the nice thing about the search in Secoda is that not only is it built with this idea of popularity in mind, but popularity is also very subjective, right? Your Google search is going to be different than my Google search, and that's going to be different than my mom's Google search. And so with Secoda, we take that into account. Tables that you've bookmarked and liked and frequently used are going to be at the top of your search, whereas tables and dictionary terms that you use are going to be at the top of your search. And so it creates this really nice accuracy around search that I think people actually really appreciate. So that's how we think about that problem.
Yep, that's really fascinating. And thanks for going through this. Definitely, I learned a lot. One thing that just came to mind with the tagging, just because I've had to deal with this quite a bit. I know platforms like Snowflake do have automatic tagging, and there's a lot of tagging that can be done there. Do those all get pulled into Secoda as part of the harvesting, or are those tags separate than what you have on the Secoda side?
It's really up to you. So you can choose to pull in DBT or Snowflake or Tableau or Looker tags and groups, or you can choose not to and have them in Secoda. The one thing I did want to mention quickly is that the nice thing about the product, beyond just some of the stuff that we dived into with the catalog, is that it does have some ability to round out the data knowledge. And so teams can also create like a data document directly within Secoda. And this uses that same documentation editor that I was showing you before. And so one use case might be Snowflake walkthrough that you might want to have index in Secoda. Once you've created that document, it indexes just the same way as any other Snowflake table would. The same thing is true of our data dictionary section, which allows you to tag metrics and data dictionary terms to different assets in Secoda. And so it creates this entire ecosystem of information, whether it's dictionary terms, columns, or tables. And of course, the data catalog is the central kind of driver of that. But without these other pieces of context, all these teams that are coming in outside of Secoda would be clueless. And so one of the common use cases we see with Secoda is this idea of collections, which we allow you to create. Collections are essentially a set of resources that you can create for different use cases. So for example, if I wanted to share data with my data team, I could use the same documentation editor, tag all the different charts and jobs and documents and key terms that I wanted my data team to see. And then I could choose to share this just my specific data team with a group of people. And then when they are on their viewer mode in Secoda, they're going to be able to see the resources that I've curated for them in Secoda. And so they can quickly jump to those resources, whether it's onboarding or something else, and quickly understand all the different information associated to, for example, looker data, which might be relevant to them.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Definitely learned a lot. Now, just switching gears here a little bit. When should the teams pick up the phone and call Secoda? Do they have to feel the pain, or is the recommendation to say, hey, as you're thinking about the modern data platform, the modern data tool, which is what we talk a lot about this channel, you want to embed this from the very get-go, right? And in the past, having been in this space for many years and decades now, this whole idea of data governance, which this falls into, would be an afterthought, would be after the fact. We have to deliver our products, and then we think about data governance, and then we think about data catalog, and then we think about search. But I want to get your thought on that, on where you recommend teams, both from bigger organizations and smaller organizations. How should they think about this?
I think that one of the misconceptions about tools like Secoda is the amount of time that they require to set up. And a lot of times what we hear from teams is, I don't want to take the time to actually set this up. In reality, Secoda is self-service for a reason. We've also created a free pricing tier for a reason. We have a growth tier that even as you scale is only $250 a month. And the reason we do that is because for a small team, for a team of 1 or 2 data engineers or analysts, a tool like Secoda is actually invaluable. You can think about the enormous amount of requests that a team of 2 or 1 person gets, and the amount of tribal knowledge that's in their brain is just enormous. And if things go well and you're hiring more data people, ideally, a tool like Secoda helps you do your job better, helps you answer less of the same questions over and over again, and also helps you kind of onboard this person faster. So we've seen data teams of 1, we've seen data teams of 0, an engineering team bring this on before a data team comes on. And of course, the sooner the better. It's easy to delay, but I think it's really powerful when a team is bought into it and is investing time into a product like Secoda. It saves you a lot of time in the long term.
Very fascinating. And you also mentioned the search box. I think I've always had the idea that the search box is one of the most powerful things anybody can interact with, right? And as an organization, the questions people are asking in there can reveal a lot. And you did mention AI piece being integrated into this. Is there, and maybe we'll go into the vision here, any thoughts around leveraging those questions, common questions people are asking, to maybe inform decisions down the line or do other things for the organizations in terms of just based on what people are asking?
Absolutely. I think today, what I will say is that we completely agree. Like, search is the backbone of Secoda. It's the backbone of our name, all for a reason. And For us, it's really about believing that search is the most intuitive interface to find what you're looking for. As a business user, I could even press /Secoda on my Slack if the Slack integration is connected and search directly through Slack. Like, how cool is that? The friction is completely removed from finding your data, find what you're looking for. In terms of the long-term vision, like, we see ourselves today as where search on the internet was maybe 22 years ago, right? You think about an old Google search and you would search maybe what was the weather in Minneapolis or in Toronto today, and here we go full circle with the weather. You get this link back in the day to the Weather Channel or some sort of website, and I go into it and then I learn all about the weather. But today, if you search the same thing into Google, you get a smart result. So we see ourselves moving towards something very similar to that. I think there's in the early teens, maybe late middle teens, there was this overpromise of what AI and data science can do. So we do try to be wary of that and be really honest with what we are able to do today and where we think the product is going. But in an ideal world, you're right, search is that interface, and Secoda can be very powerful in informing business decisions beyond just searching for metadata.
Yeah, very fascinating. And I think the ambition definitely tells. It's fascinating what you and the team are doing. Are there any specific industries or vertical you tend to see specializing in, or is it everybody essentially needs this? Like, I'm talking about healthcare or fintech or maybe manufacturing, or is that demand really across the board?
I think our three most common industries are healthcare, fintech, and then you could call it like SaaS, general tech, marketplace, fast growing companies. That being said, I've been so surprised, as I'm sure you have, like working with all these companies that are adopting the modern data stack. I feel like my job is so exciting because one day I get to work with an educational institution, and the next day I get to work with wind turbine manufacturer, and the next day I'm on the phone with someone in Europe that's a conglomerate of some sort of company. So I feel like we are so lucky in the data space to get exposure to all these different businesses and use cases around data. Similar to data warehouses, it is pretty industry agnostic, but of course, if you're a data sensitive company or you're collecting more data, you will have more inclination to use these kind of tools at an earlier stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've said it really well. Hey, this is very fascinating. Thank you for coming to the channel and doing a demo. I think it's a very fascinating product. And with the vision you and the team has, I think it's going to be exciting to see where this goes in the community, on the channel, watching. Where can they find you? Are the links to LinkedIn or your website? We're definitely going to leave those all in the comment section below, but maybe you want to call those out as well.
Yeah, you can search Secoda. It's spelled SECODA. Search SECO for company, DA for data. We're usually the first thing that shows up. You could also find us. We're in all the common Slack communities, the DBT, Locally Optimistic, Data Talks Club. We also have our own Slack community, which we invite you to join if you want to see how other people are using Secoda. And more than anything, I think we are a pretty flexible group of people. So wherever you are, we're happy to meet you there. So hopefully, you reach out.
Awesome. Thanks, Itai. Searchable company data. I thank you so much for coming to the demo hub and demoing this. Hopefully, as you make progress, we might bring you for a take two.
Thanks so much really appreciate it.